Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're digging into something really unsettling. We've got a collection of true stories, chilling accounts passed down through generations. These came from a listener, actually, from their grandparents. And these aren't just, quaint family tales. They're about real danger, hidden secrets, surprising betrayals, and, incredible survival against the odds. We're going to explore what happens when life takes a terrifying turn. So get ready. These stories, they'll definitely stick with you. Okay, let's start with this first one. It's from the listener's grandma, and honestly, it sounds like something straight out of, Hollywood itself. For years, the family thought grandma was uncomfortable hearing grandpa talk about his producer days in 60s Hollywood working with, Audrey Hepburn, Hitchcock. They figured, maybe he had an affair. It seemed plausible, right? The old glamorous producer thing. But after grandpa passed, they finally asked her. And the truth, much, much darker. Turns out grandma went to Hollywood in her early 20s. An aspiring actress, full of dreams, but she was determined, wanted to make it on her own.
Used a different last name, didn't want to use grandpa's connections at all. So after loads of rejections, she gets this call, a big film opportunity, unknown director, weird location, rundown building, outskirts of town. She goes in, and inside, 4 people masked, 3 women, 1 man. The second she realizes something's wrong and tries to leave, 2 of the women grab her, they beat her, tie her up, and then they tell her what she has to do, rob an apartment for them, or they'll kill her. Just like that. From actress hopeful to forced accomplice.
It's just horrifying, isn't it? And, people often forget how ruthless places like Hollywood could be, especially back then, maybe less regulated. Industries like that, they could be breeding grounds for exploitation. Young artists, especially women trying to break in, were incredibly vulnerable. So this wasn't just a random mugging. It sounds like a calculated scheme. They saw an opportunity, turned it into a trap. And that psychological hit, realizing your own dreams, your ambition, are being twisted and used against you to make you a target, that's devastating, often more so than the physical violence.
Absolutely. That sense of betrayal must have been just shattering. So, okay, she's terrified, but she agrees, trying to figure out how to escape. They take her to this apartment. The man goes with her, carrying the pipe. They tell her to fill a sack with cash. As she's grabbing the money, he shoves her, tells her to hurry up.
Yeah.
And in that moment, that absolute terror, she sees this glass vase with flowers in it. I mean, incredible presence of mind, right? To spot a potential weapon under that kind of pressure.
It really is. And psychologically, that's more than just bravery. It taps into that primal fight or flight response. Sometimes extreme fear can trigger this weirdly hyper-focused clarity, let which make a split-second decision, something totally unplanned. Survival instinct just takes over everything else. Fear becomes action.
And what an action. She grabs the vase, smashes it right in the guy's face, and just bolts out a back door, runs for blocks, finally finds a police car. But, the cops, they're skeptical at first. It was actually Grandpa, apparently raising hell, who finally made them listen. Her description was detailed enough they arrested one of the women, and she confessed everything. The plan was horrible. Knock Grandma out, leave her there, frame her for the robbery. They figured she was just some expendable young actress getting lost in the dark world of show business. Grandma left Hollywood immediately after that. Grandpa followed a few months later. And the family finally understood. Her lifelong unease wasn't about jealousy. It was about the sheer terror she'd survived.
Yeah, that speaks volumes about the scars, doesn't it? The fact they saw her as expendable. That's a chilling level of dehumanization. This wasn't just about money. It was an attempt to basically destroy her life, her future, using her own hopes against her. And the lasting impact, the trauma, the betrayal, maybe constant hypervigilance, seeing the world differently, those are her hallmarks of severe trauma that can last forever. And the fact she kept it secret for so long, protecting her family, I guess, shows incredible strength, but also, wow, what a heavy burden to carry.
Yeah, heavy burden. Okay, shifting gears now from Hollywood danger to something seemingly much more innocent, a childhood sleepover. But this one happens at the grandparents' farm. Our listener and their cousin James are kids. They're on this creepy old loft playing PlayStation. Middle of the night, maybe midnight, they hear this huge bang downstairs. Scares them half to death. Then silence. Then another loud bang, like a door slamming really hard. They're kids, right? They think maybe grandma or grandpa fell. James tells our listener to go check. So they creep down these ladder-style stairs. And they hear murmuring, voices downstairs. They're inching down the hallway, totally freaked out, when another loud bang makes them jump. And suddenly, Grandpa appears. He looks intense, like nothing the listener had ever seen. He just points back up to the loft and really yells, "Now!" The listener had never heard him yell like that. Never seen that look. They just sprinted back up to the loft, totally confused, totally terrified. Heard more banging, shuffling noises through the night. But somehow, eventually, they fell asleep. Just imagine being that kid, the confusion, the fear.
It's an incredible display of that protective instinct, isn't it? Grandparents, parents, it just overrides everything. That N now W, it had to be a split-second, desperate decision. He needed to get the child safe, but without alerting the intruder that anyone else was even there. He's basically risking himself entirely in that moment. It's that quick thinking under just extreme pressure. Every sound, every move is critical. And the children, thankfully, were too young to really grasp the danger they were in.
Right. That ignorance was probably a blessing for them at the time. So next morning, the grandparents look absolutely shattered, just exhausted, drinking coffee. Grandpa has his hunting rifle out, leaning nearby. The kids just think it's weird. Years go by. Then, at a family reunion, Grandpa finally tells them the truth. That first bang, an intruder trying to kick the front door in. The second bang, they got through. Grandma was terrified, hiding in the coat closet, and Grandpa's yell, "Now what?" It was exactly what it seemed. A warning, trying not to tip off the intruder. He grabbed his rifle, confronted them, forced them to leave, stayed up all night, rifle in hand, made an unofficial report to his friend, the sheriff, later. But here's the part that gives you chills. When our listener was creeping down that hallway, they were just feet away from the intruder, totally unaware of how close they were to, well, who knows what.
Yeah, that story really hits home about silent protection, how adults shield children from awful realities. They absorb the fear, the trauma of themselves, just to keep that innocence intact for a little longer. It's admirable, of course, but carrying that secret, knowing what almost happened, that takes a toll on the protector too. And for the listener, finding out years later, that must have been a profound shock. Realizing the danger, realizing their grandparents' immense courage, it makes you rethink everything, wonder about other hidden stories.
It really does. The weight of those hidden stories. Okay, let's go overseas for this next one. Listener's other grandpa, during his military service in Germany after the war, he was single back then, soldiers spending downtime. He met a woman in a pub one night, Irma. Described her as stunning. Curly blonde hair, bright blue eyes, a smile that could light up an entire room. They clicked, apparently, even with the language barrier, so they leave the pub, walk back to her place. First it seems okay, but then things get uneasy. Dark alleyways, then it's just woods, really secluded. He hears twigs snapping. But he's charmed, right? Totally taken with her, brushes it off. Her cottage looks like something from a fairy tale. Wooden, cozy fire inside. He's completely smitten, even asks her apparently to come to America with him. But then things shift. As she's getting close, unbuttoning his uniform, he glances up, sees a man's face peering in the window. He asks Irma about it, but she dismisses it, tries to distract him. But this fear starts creeping in. He remembers the noises in the woods. Were they followed?
That's such a classic example of, well, psychologists call it the affect heuristic. Basically, strong emotions like attraction can literally make you ignore obvious warning signs. And think about the context: post-war Germany, unfamiliar place. Soldiers were vulnerable. That need for connection, for something normal, it can really lower your guard. His infatuation, the romantic setting, it created this strong bias against seeing the danger right in front of him.
Yeah, it's amazing how fast feelings can cloud judgment. So he pulls away from Irma, says he needs to check outside. He goes for his weapon. He'd left it by the door. It's gone. He turns to ask Irma about it, and boom, this big guy bursts in, bunches Grandpa square in the face. He said it was like getting struck by iron. The guy just beats him mercilessly, throws him onto a table, and stabs him in the side with a hunting knife. But here's the twist, the really brutal part. Irma panics, and she runs out into the woods with the attacker, leaving Grandpa there bleeding, presumably for dead. The woman he was falling for, she was part of it the whole time.
The betrayal is just absolute, utterly devastating. This wasn't just a random attack, it was planned. Trust was built specifically to set him up for violence. For Grandpa, realizing the person he was starting to care for was actively involved in trying to kill him, that's a profound psychological blow. It just shatters your ability to trust anyone, especially when you were so wrong about someone. The emotional scars from that kind of betrayal, often much deeper than the physical ones.
Absolutely. Hard to even imagine recovering from that emotionally. But incredibly, he survived. A military buddy of his got suspicious back at the pub, noticed muddy footprints leading away, and actually followed them. Found Grandpa unconscious in the cottage, carried him back to the base. So Grandpa lived, had that physical scar his whole life, but also, the heartbreak, the betrayal by Irma. His advice passed down: be careful who you give your heart to, because they may just try to cut it out when you least expect it. Pretty potent lesson learned the hardest way possible. Okay, this next story is, wow, another huge family secret kept hidden for decades. Listener's grandma. She was married once before their papa. kept it secret from everyone, even from Papa himself for years and years. Her first husband was this guy named Davy, a total bad boy. Grandma was 19, drawn to him. He was feared, respected, very manipulative, but he made her feel important. He'd pull her into his dangerous world, but apparently he'd always make her wait outside during the actual, violent stuff. She described it as feeding her addiction to the fear, which is a really disturbing way to put it.
That phrase, addiction to the fear, really says a lot about the psychology of those kinds of relationships, doesn't it? It's not just romance. It sounds like a really intense, codependent dynamic, fueled by manipulation, maybe the thrill of danger. For someone young, maybe impressionable, Davy offered this twisted kind of power, a sense of belonging, maybe, but it tied her to his violence. These relationships often involve, a slow chipping away at boundaries, at your own moral compass, makes it incredibly hard to leave.
And it definitely escalated. One night, Davy bursts into their room at the boarding house. He's frantic, angry, yelling, they have to leave right now. Grandma thought she saw blood on his clothes, wasn't sure. Then he gives this chilling order. They will never speak about tonight. She needs to forget it ever happened. Even for Davy, this felt different, felt over the line. Later, Davy vanishes. After some hostile talk at their door with someone else, Davy seems scared this time, not angry. Grandma gets this awful feeling. Police detective finds an address Davy might have been connected to. She goes there. It's a warehouse. And inside, a horrific scene. A lot of blood in a body. A John Doe never identified.
This is where you get into really difficult territory, something like moral injury. Grandma was trapped in this awful ethical spot. Her choice not to say anything about Davy, probably driven by fear, maybe some twisted loyalty left over, maybe just self-preservation. That would have come at a huge psychological price. Carrying that knowledge, that complicity, even if it was passive, it can eat away at you for your whole life. Changes how you see yourself.
And the guilt must have been immense. Especially because, get this, one of the police officers who showed up at the warehouse scene, who was comforting and professional, that was the man who eventually became her husband, Papa. Can you even imagine the layers of that secret? Knowing your husband investigated crime you know your first husband committed? So Grandma just erased Davy. Destroyed photos, records, everything. Lived in constant fear he'd somehow find her kids. Carried that terrifying secret her entire life. Just heartbreaking, the burden she lived with.
It's almost unimaginable, isn't it, that weight? And the irony, the tragedy of her future husband being one of the investigating officers, it's almost Shakespearean. That secret wasn't just about protecting herself anymore. It became about protecting her whole new life, her family, everything she'd built. That level of constant fear, that guilt, it shapes a person profoundly. It impacts relationships, self-worth, inner peace. Every single day. Shows how one event can cast such an incredibly long shadow.
A long shadow indeed. Which brings us to our next story. This one's more recent. Proving danger doesn't care how old you are. Picture this. Listeners' grandparents, elderly now, in their 80s, driving home late one night from a family thing. It's about an hour drive through really empty rural roads. Suddenly, bam, flat tire. Looks like they ran over something sharp left in the road. And of course, no spare tire. So they're stuck. Side of the road, pitch black, middle of nowhere, a vulnerable situation for anyone, let alone an elderly couple.
Yeah, that immediately sets off alarm bells. Isolated spots, late at night. Sadly, the elderly can sometimes be seen as easier targets. It's a horrible reality. Their physical vulnerability plus the stress of being stranded, it's kind of a perfect storm for someone looking to exploit a situation. And that sudden loss of safety, even on a familiar road, can be really disorienting, really frightening.
And what started as just bad luck turns terrifying, fast. Two cars appear out of the darkness. They box the grandparents' car in. One pulls up so close it's actually touching their bumper. Men, get out. Start yanking on the locked car doors, yelling at them to open up. When they don't, the men start smashing the car windows with baseball bats. Just wailing on the car. They're demanding wallets, threatening them, saying this would be the end if they didn't cooperate. Then the attackers actually jump onto the hood of the car, start smashing the windshield. Glass is cracking, starting to cave in. Grandma apparently said later that was the first moment she genuinely thought, this is it. This is how it ends.
That's the terrifying threshold, isn't it? When the barrier of the car is breached, the violence becomes immediate, physical. Using baseball bats, that level of aggression, it's designed purely to terrify, to overwhelm any thought of resistance. People often underestimate the psychological shock of having your personal space violated so aggressively, so suddenly, especially if you feel physically less able to defend yourself. It's a direct assault on your basic sense of security.
It's a nightmare image. And then, just like you see in movies, flashing police lights appear down the road, like the cavalry arriving at the last possible second. As the lights get closer, one attacker reaches through the now cracked windshield, trying to grab Grandma's purse off the seat. But Grandma Instinctively, just yanks her purse back. The sudden movement makes the guy stumble, lose his balance, fall off the hood. The attackers see the police, jump back in their cars, and speed off. They were never caught. We don't know if it was just robbery or something worse planned. But the family, immensely grateful for one thing. Grandma had only recently, reluctantly, learned how to use a cell phone, and she'd managed to call 911 right when it started. That call likely saved their lives.
It's just a powerful reminder of resilience, isn't it? Even in their 80s. Grandma's instinct to pull the purse back. Despite the terror, survival instincts don't just vanish with age. And yeah, the cell phone. You can't overstate its importance there. Especially in isolated areas, that immediate link to help is absolutely critical. This story really highlights vulnerability, yes, but also incredible courage in the face of a direct, violent threat. And, the simple importance of being prepared, even with something as basic as knowing how to use your phone.
Truly incredible. Okay, this next story. It involves a family secret that came out in a really tragic way, and it might be one of the most disturbing. The listener's grandmother started suffering from memory loss later in life, and she began repeatedly mentioning a brother. The family was confused. As far as they knew, she never had a brother. They initially thought it was just the illness talking, rambling. But Grandma became more and more distressed about this phantom brother. It wasn't just casual mentions, it was causing her real anguish.
The fact that this memory, this person, persisted so strongly even as other memories were fading, that's psychologically very significant. It suggests this connection, and whatever happened around it was incredibly impactful, so deeply embedded that it resisted the effects of the memory loss. It points towards a trauma or a relationship that fundamentally shaped her inner world, even if it was kept hidden for decades.
Exactly. The weight of it was clearly immense. So the listener and their sister started asking gentle questions, and Grandma eventually revealed more. This brother wasn't biological. He was her childhood best friend, your protector, she said. But later, he turned into a violent bully. Then came the really shocking part, she confessed. This friend got into a bad bar fight, hurt someone seriously. He was released, but then he went back and finished the job. He murdered the man he fought with and went on the run. Grandma finally told them his name. And when the listener heard it, their jaws hit the floor because it was the name of a famous, infamous great uncle, a name synonymous with horrific crimes.
Wow. Discovering a family member is, a notorious killer. That's identity-shattering stuff. It's not just uncovering a secret, it's confronting a direct link, familial, emotional, to something truly monstrous. Psychologically, this can trigger what's sometimes called familial trauma. Descendants grapple with this tainted legacy. It can cause anxiety, shame, identity confusion. It forces you to completely rethink who you are, where you come from, and what that connection even means.
And the scope of his crimes was horrifying. He went on a spree, as Grandma put it, doing some of the most disturbing and heinous things imaginable. He was eventually caught, and his life ended that day. The implication being he died upon capture, didn't face trial. The fallout for the immediate family was drastic. Her parents, the listener's great-grandparents, changed their names, moved far away, cut all ties. Grandma herself dropped out of school, couldn't cope with the reality of who her childhood protector had become. At first, the rest of the family, especially Grandma's own daughter, the listener's mother, didn't believe it. They thought it was the memory loss, fabricating stories. But then came this really poignant moment. Grandma was looking through old things, searching for childhood photos maybe, and hidden between an old mattress and box spring, she found it. One single folded newspaper clipping, the evidence, an article detailing her brother's terrible crimes, and on the back, a handwritten note, "I love you, sis. Don't let them beat you up. Love always," his name. And just like that, this dark, hidden chapter of their family history was undeniable. The serial killer relative was real. What a profoundly disturbing thing for a family to uncover.
It's almost like something from a movie, that reveal, but grounded in this painful reality of memory and trauma. And that note, a sign of a connection that once existed, however twisted it became. It makes the horror so intensely personal. It's not just history, it's part of their identity now. Discovering something like that, it allows for a kind of processing, maybe closure, even as it opens up entirely new wounds about their family's past.
Our last story for today takes us back in time again, onto the ocean. A journey that started with hope and ended in terror. This is from the listener's other grandpa, traveling from Italy to America. Young guy, strong, full of hope, going to meet his brother Gina in the States. But somewhere out in the Atlantic, disaster strikes. The ship just loses all power, dead in the water, middle of the ocean. Panic starts spreading immediately. But for Grandpa, the real nightmare was just beginning. Chaos erupted pretty quickly. A group of men on board basically took over the entire ship. Like pirates, the listener said, Grandpa described it. They started separating passengers, hoarding resources probably. And they were brutal. Anyone who questioned them or spoke out got beaten badly. Grandpa felt completely helpless. He was a big guy, strong, but he knew if he stepped up, they'd likely beat him even worse, maybe kill him. So dozens of people were forced into this cramped, almost pitch-black room below deck, crying, coughing, terrified, everyone thinking they were going to die out there, no idea if help would ever come. It wasn't a ship anymore, it was a prison.
That really shows how quickly social structures can just collapse under extreme stress, doesn't it? When authority disappears, when survival kicks in, you see this mob mentality, opportunistic violence taking over. And Grandpa's feeling of helplessness, it's like the bystander effect, but worse. He wants to act, but he's paralyzed by the overwhelming threat, the certainty of terrible consequences if he does, feeling utterly powerless while witnessing chaos and cruelty. That's a profound trauma in itself.
And even feeling paralyzed, he did try. At one point, he couldn't take it anymore. He tackled one of the rogue men, but instantly, like 3 others jumped him, beat him savagely. Then they dragged him away and locked him in a tiny, dark closet for hours. From inside that closet, he said he heard the most unsettling commotion he'd ever experienced, the real screams of people you know. He apparently said later that horror movies weren't scary to him after that. Nothing compared to being trapped, hearing those sounds, and being completely unable to help. Just agonizing.
That sensory experience, being confined, forced to listen to the suffering of people, maybe friends, unable to do anything. That is a uniquely potent form of psychological torture. It's not abstract fear, it's immediate personal horror. It can create deep moral injury, survivor's guilt. Experiences like that strip away any illusions about safety or decency and leave you with this raw understanding of just how vulnerable humans can be.
Eventually, somehow, another ship did arrive. Rescue. The rogue men were rounded up and arrested. Grandpa actually heard their screams from the closet as they were being taken. The ship was eventually repaired, the journey finished. But the end wasn't happy. Several people Grandpa knew from the journey had died during the mutiny. And the whole tragedy was apparently kind of swept under the rug, largely ignored afterwards. This left Grandpa deeply disillusioned with the American dream he'd hoped for. But it also lit a fire in him. He spent much of his life after that dedicated to helping new immigrants arriving from Italy, making sure their passage was safer, helping them find shelter, find jobs, trying to prevent others from facing that kind of horror.
That's an incredible transformation, isn't it? How profound trauma, instead of completely breaking someone, can ignite this lifelong drive for justice, for compassion. He channeled his disillusionment, his suffering, into something positive, something altruistic. He didn't just survive the ordeal, he used that terrible experience to become an advocate, ensuring others wouldn't be dehumanized the way he and his fellow passengers were. That's resilience at its most powerful, turning personal tragedy into a legacy of hope.
These stories we've shared, they're a really stark reminder, I think, that the deepest horror isn't always in movies or books. It can be hidden in plain sight, tangled up with the people we love, even part of our own family's past, just waiting beneath the surface. These moments of vulnerability, these chilling encounters, these dark secrets, they push people to their absolute limits. They test resilience in ways most of us hopefully never have to experience, and they leave marks that last for generations.
Absolutely. So maybe the next time you hear a family story, even a simple one, you might pause and wonder, what else is there? What untold depths, what hidden struggles, what incredible acts of strength might be buried just beneath the surface of the tales your own family tells? What truths, what sacrifices shape the people you know?
For more unsettling explorations into the shadows of the past, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel, Horror Docx. Thank you for joining us on the Deep Dive today.